Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started here, but we are recording. So if anyone has to run or if anyone misses part, they can always come back and check this out. But again, I just want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for our session today, a launch party for our Hydropower Licensing 101 Toolkit. My name's Angie Furman, and I'm the River Training Center Coordinator for River Management Society. And just want to thank you all for coming. First off here, I'm going to run it through a quick little agenda of what we're going to cover. If you can go to the next slide. Excellent. So we have about 90 minutes today, and we're going to try to accomplish quite a bit. We're going to do some introductions here in a minute of our team and do a little icebreaker poll so that we can get to know you all. And then we're going to get into our Hydropower Licensing 101 Toolkit. We're going to talk a little bit about the project background and why we decided to do this project, what our development process was like, our timeline, and coming up with what is a core competency and how we came up with some core competencies for hydropower and participating in the process of a relicensing or a licensing. And then we're going to cover a little bit of some of the gaps, plans that we've got in store around this project. Some time for Q&A. Active participants in the make sure that we get to them, and then we'll end. And so just a couple reminders. Recording, as I mentioned, and you will be able to find this on the RMS YouTube channel afterwards. I also suggest you check out our hydropower playlist that we're building while you're there. Also available for anyone who might need. All right. So can we go to the next slide here? I'd like to really have them introduce themselves. As I mentioned, I'm Angie Furman, and I'm the River Training Center. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues, Risa, Becca, to introduce themselves. Go ahead, Risa. You are muted right now. Risa, you're muted. Oh.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
So sorry about that. Technically challenged here. Risa Shimoda from the River Management Society, and I'm thrilled to be working on this. I've been a volunteer working on hydropower for many years and know that it's a process that not everyone would love to do on a Sunday afternoon. So really appreciate your taking the time to learn more about this and become conversant in it.
Thanks, Risa. I'm Becca Price, and I'm the communications coordinator with RMS, and I helped put together the website. So thanks everyone for being here.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Krista Sherwood at the National Park Service. I'm the National Program Manager for the Hydropower Assistance Program. And Susan Roseborough, I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. She's our national team lead. And she will be joining a little bit later. She has another meeting that she's currently in, but I'll go ahead and pass it over to Kevin Lewis to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I am Kevin Lewis. I am part of an experienced workforce, and I'm assisting the National Park Service in their hydropower program. I've been around hydropower licensing. I just was doing some counting. I think my first hydro project was like 1994 or 1995, so a long time. And I'll pass it on to Angel.
Yeah, hey everybody, thank you so much for joining. My name is Angel Valenzuela. I am a fellow with the National Park Service and the Hydropower Assistance Program. And I've just helped bring in a beginner role, a beginner perspective into this project, and also helping develop the environmental justice and equity core competency. So thanks for being here, everybody.
All right. I'm hoping people can hear me a little bit better. I turned off my video, so apologies for breaking up earlier, but I hope everyone was able to catch the agenda by reading it on the screen. We also just want to take a moment to thank all of our project advisors and subject matter experts who have helped out with this project. They've really supported us through this process, helped provide a lot of resources that we'll cover a little later on, as well as just invaluable input and guidance as we've asked them for feedback throughout this process. So a huge thank you to our project advisors and subject matter experts.
All right, well, awesome. And now that we've taken some time to tell you guys a little bit about ourselves, let's take some time to learn a little bit more about our audience. So let's break the ice and run a little poll. So if everybody is on Zoom, a poll should pop up right now. And let's see, let's get Angie or Becca, if y'all can start running that poll, that'd be great. And so our first question is asking everyone what region you're located in. I think it'd be good to see where everyone is located, and we can see how spread out everybody is. So take a couple seconds to answer that question. Me personally, I'm from Utah originally, but relocated to DC when I started this fellowship. So now I'm in the Northeast, which has been really fun to get to know. Awesome. Yeah, I see those answers coming in. Great. And now, so if you've answered that first question, let's move on to the second. And so I'd like to move on to the point of this whole presentation, right? We'd like to ask y'all who has actually been involved in the licensing or relicensing with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, otherwise known as FERC. So that's a quick yes or no. Go ahead and answer that. Take a couple seconds and let us know if you've actually participated in a relicensing or licensing. And after you've taken a look at that, let's look at the third question, which asks, whether you have or haven't participated in a licensing for. I want you all to think about how your work relates to the hydropower licensing process. So we have various options under the question there. But if you can't find your specific expertise there, you can always click unsure or other, and feel free to type in some of your work in the chat as well. We'd love to hear how your work relates to the hydropower licensing process. And finally, the last question on there, after you've given some thought and consideration to all of this, I'd like y'all to think about how you would rate your familiarity as a hydropower practitioner. And we have various options, right? So you could be a complete rookie, which is kind of what I was when I first came into this project. You can be an advanced beginner, you can be competent, proficient, or you could be a living, walking resource, which I'm interested to see how many of y'all would categorize yourself as that. So take a minute to answer those questions. Looks like we're about 90% of the participants have answered. So go ahead and go through those and answer those questions for us. And then we can take a moment to wrap that all together and see how these results can show the need for a project like this to be developed. So I'll give you all a couple more seconds. All right, awesome. I think we can end the poll there. And let's share the results here. All right. Great. Yeah, so it looks like the majority of people are coming from the Northeast and the West. So that's awesome. It looks like there's people from all around, and also some people that come from a different region as well. So I think it's really awesome to see people from everywhere come around to learn a little bit more about the hydropower licensing process. And that's really interesting. It looks like, yeah, most of us, the majority of us have participated in the licensing, 63 saying yes, and 38 saying no. And then let's see, so how the current work relates to the hydropower licensing process. So we have aquatic, cultural, recreation, which seems to be the biggest one. Looks like 50% of our participants say their work relates to the hydropower licensing process through recreation, which is great because the core competency that we've built out for that covers a lot of recreation like resources. So that's good to see. And then coming in second, it looks like regulatory is another big one. And let's see if anybody's put anything into the chat. We can come back and visit those. But for the fourth one, yeah, it looks like the majority, like the big chunk of participants are rookies and advanced beginners, making up, what is that, like 60% of participants. And I think that's great. I think that directly highlights why there was the need to create this kind of project, because this hydropower licensing process is lengthy and very complex, and there's a niche for so many different areas of expertise throughout this process. And those living walking resources, the 4 of you that answered that, we'd love to talk to you, because I'm sure you have some expertise to be very beneficial for the project. But great, yeah, thanks for participating in that poll. We can stop sharing those results, and I'll pass it over to Chris to talk a little bit more about the background on our project.
Sure. Thank you so much, Angel. Yeah, we just wanted to provide a little bit of a background about this project. It is a very successful partnership effort between the National Park Service and River Management Society, and ultimately made possible through that partnership, but also through all of the wonderful contributions that those many volunteers providing expertise and input along the way that Angie mentioned earlier on that slide. So there's been a lot of folks that have contributed to this very important tool, and we're just really excited to share with you all today. A little bit about our organizations. The National Park Service does have a hydropower assistance program, and we provide technical assistance to enhance river conservation and outdoor recreation through engaging in the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission proceedings for the licensing and relicensing of non-federal hydropower projects across the country. The River Management Society is a nonprofit organization aimed at advancing the profession of river management by providing managers, researchers, educators, and others with a forum for sharing information about the appropriate use and management of river resources. So we came together with a shared goal, along with many other partnership efforts, to advance the tools, training, resources, and knowledge available for river managers to improve public access to river recreation opportunities and river recreation management and natural and cultural resource protection. So next slide. So ultimately, we identified that the FERC hydropower licensing process can be very complex and lengthy, with a lot of steps along the way, as many of you all know. And licenses are issued every 30 to 50 years. And so being involved in that licensing or relicensing process can often be a once in a generation or a lifetime opportunity to incorporate lasting environmental, cultural, and recreation measures. So the involvement in the FERC licensing process really benefits from having a wide range of stakeholders, constituents, agencies, and interest groups to ensure that there's comprehensive input and expertise in the process, and ultimately helping to guide the process to best represent the community and resource needs. And so next slide, please. that's really why we all came together to identify the need to develop a new toolkit that's aimed at identifying core competencies that are necessary for those that either you're a hydropower practitioner or you're a community member or another involved with an organization, ultimately with varying levels of expertise to more effectively engage in that hydropower licensing process through FERC. So this process allowed us to also, as we're identifying those core competencies, those critical elements of being engaged in the process, it also allowed us to identify where there might be gaps in existing training materials, resources, and best practice examples. So we identified the core competencies, we identified where there's these materials to help others learn more about that step and that competency, and then we were able to identify where there might be gaps. And so we were able to also identify where there might be additional resources and training and best practice examples that might be needed. And in addition to developing a strategy on how to achieve those gaps, to fill those gaps. So we began this process about a year ago and are excited to share with you this great tool that is available on the RMS website. And so now I'm going to pass the presentation over to Risa, who can provide additional information about this project and the process that we went through. So Risa?
Hi, I'm here, and we're also going to.
Oh, go ahead, Risa.
I'm here, but I did a recording that it kind of explains the process for the next couple of slides.
About this time, our core team got together and agreed that in order to accomplish our goals, we would be well advised to harness the expertise of some hydropower licensing experts. To pursue the outcomes Krista has just mentioned, we invite river professionals who are indeed hydropower veterans and ask them to extend the invitation to help out to others in their hydro licensing network. We asked individuals to serve as project advisors. We would ask to weigh in on both Toolkit content development and its organization, or subject matter experts who we would ask to suggest resources in specialty areas. We met for the first time in November 2022 to seek input from both groups as we drafted the areas of knowledge, experience, and technical skills that are involved and articulated in a manner that seems intuitive to someone new to this work. We utilized a neat tool called the Padlet, suggested by Angie Furman, RMS's River Training Center coordinator, to build a list of competency areas folks felt were important. We conducted online research and identified over 70 resources for one or more of the hydropower licensing core competencies, from detailed guides written specifically for individuals and organizations interested in or charged with hydropower licensing responsibilities, to examples of settlements that establish a notable precedent. We met in February with advisors to encourage their input on the resources we'd collected and welcome their suggested additions. With those additions, we then refined the hydropower practitioner resources by and meeting with smaller groups and individual subject matter experts, continuing to welcome as many suggestions as possible. We also then identified gaps in the information that we would like to identify. It may be that these resources simply do not yet exist. This summer, we drafted content for the website based on resources discovered and input received. In late July, we asked our advisors to provide input on the content and the references and received many, many top-notch suggestions. We have considered their thoughtful input and clarifications and incorporated many, if not all of them, into the website. Throughout this time, this team has met once or twice each month to keep the process moving along. What we hope you'll find as you walk through these website pages are the core competencies that are evidenced in knowledge, skills, and abilities that enable practitioners to navigate the FERC hydropower licensing process. some of them being critical to most proceedings, and others that may be relevant only at certain points in the process. We hope they seem to be, to you, a good foundation for newcomers, as well as a helpful refresher for experienced practitioners and everybody in between. And we hope that these all provide a good resource for tribes, federal agencies, and members of the public who will be involved in this work.
Looks like this slide isn't working. Oh, there we go. All right. Awesome. Yeah. And that was a recording of Risa going over the project timeline, and then also covering what a core competency is, right? So that latter half was kind of covering this slide. But yeah, just to give you all some context about what we were looking for each of those core competencies. And yeah, Risa, do you want to cover anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's kind of described the process and the way we've incorporated both what we could figure out on our own and the advice of the advisors and our subject matter experts. And I think we're ready to share what we've come up with.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Risa. Thanks for sharing the background. I'm sorry for the delay on the slide, but so you've heard from a variety of people on our team, and you're probably ready to jump in and see the actual toolkit. So I'm going to switch over now to the website. We will start, like Krista mentioned, this is located on the RMS website. So we're going to go to our homepage and show you where to find it. We will share the link as well in our follow-up email so that you can save that, bookmark it. Let's see, share. All right, so on the RMS website, under the resources tab, you'll see a hydropower link. And then on this page, we've got a few different hydropower resources. These are also linked to from within the toolkit itself. So the top link here is the toolkit. And this is the home page. And let's see, I'm going to shrink it just a little bit. So the general layout of the toolkit is this home page. And then at the bottom, you'll see links to each of the 6 areas of core competency that were identified as part of this project. Before we get into those pages, I'll just give you a couple of navigational tips. So within the toolkit, you'll see in a few places a light bulb, and that basically indicates some kind of a resource or point that we want to draw special attention to. In this case, it's going to take you to, like I said, there's this main page, there are the 6 core competency pages, and the only other page that is a part of this toolkit is linked right here. And we'll hop over to that really quick. These are some tips for beginners. And these basically are kind of some interpersonal skills and things that will be really important to you. So we would encourage you not to skip over this and to read through this and just kind of keep all these skills in mind as you're working with the variety of different stakeholders that are involved. I'll also point out these 3 links here. These are the same links that were on that hydropower resources page. One takes you to the RMS hydropower video playlist. That's a playlist that will continue to grow. We will post this recording there if you want to rewatch it. The second link takes you to hydropower summaries. These are produced by RMS and the Hydropower Reform Coalition, and they take documents that are the license documents that are between usually 150 and 200 pages and distill them into a few pages of information that is most relevant to the public and to practitioners. So that's a really helpful tool as well. And then this third link takes you to the Hydropower Reform Coalition website, where they have a resource library, and we'll talk more about that later. So yeah, from here, we will hop into the first core competency. I will mention these are not necessarily meant to be navigated chronologically. They're all really different topics. So you can kind of navigate them in a way that makes sense for you. And then right before I hand it off to Angie, I'll mention each of these are pretty much formatted the same. Some of these pages have drop-down menus on them that have a lot more content within them. And then at the bottom of each of the core competency pages, we have a smaller version of that same menu that we just saw. So when you're on one core competency page, you can navigate to the others. But from here, I will hand it off to Angie.
Yeah, thanks, Becca. And my internet seems to have stabilized, but let me know if you're having issues and I can turn off my video again. But this first page from the Toolkit homepage, this first competency area, the licensing process. Here we've got an overview of the licensing process, as well as some links to different resources that are going to be valuable, like the links to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission or FERC's website, as well as Hydropower Reform Coalition again. But specifically, as Becca's going down towards the bottom of the overview of the process, there is a nice little graphic document put together that kind of gets into the integrated licensing process, or ILP, as well as the traditional licensing process. You'll see that they're both linked there, and these both lead to this same document that just, you know, kind of breaks down the different processes from pre-filing and post-filing, also spells out some of those acronyms, since there's a world of acronyms here. So that was a link I wanted to highlight. And then also down below where that light bulb is, again, highlighting, you know, kind of that important point that goes to FERC's e-library and online system, which is really important to become, you know, familiar with as you're working through a licensing or relicensing process with hydropower. Next up, we've got regulations and regulatory roles. So these blue boxes here are drop-down boxes. So if Becca clicks on the first one, you'll see this kind of covers when a FERC authorization is needed on a hydropower project. The next one covers a little bit of how FERC is set up. And then we've also got FERC's roles and what that all includes listed out there. Next down, we have some primary laws, regulations, and policies that are important to be familiar with, right? So we've got the Federal Power Act and the Clean Water Act, in particular, the 401 certifications, tribal trust responsibility, and like FERC's tribal consultation policy. So these are important to be familiar with. And then we have some other key laws, regulations, and policies that are important to be familiar with, or you should be aware of at least. And so here's where you can kind of find more information about these. And actually, Becca, if you go back to the primary laws, regulations, and policies, I forgot to point out, there's that light bulb again. And so that links to the Hydropower Reform Coalition's Citizen Guide for Effective Participation in Hydropower Licensing. Really great resource, and it kind of gets into some of these regulations and regulatory rules a little bit more. So it's a great place to go learn a little bit more about these. And then lastly, down at the bottom, the last light blue box are some laws, regulations, and policies that are specific to National Park Service lands. The next competency area, I'm going to cover our facility types, operations, and economics. So towards the top of the page, again, we have these 3 blue boxes that are drop-down boxes. So you can click on them, learn a little bit about the 3 types of operations, such as conventional. We've got some imagery, as well as some information to go along with the imagery about conventional. We also have similar for pump storage. We've got some images that explain how it works, as well as some explanation and some links. And then we've got a little bit about hydrokinetics as well. And then below that, we have a couple paragraphs about economics, power prices, and markets, and just, understanding how project economics can be critical to project viability, and when you need to evaluate trade-offs, such as between stream flows and power generation. So it's just drawing some attention to that. And now I'm going to pass it over to Angel to take us through the next few pages.
Great, awesome. Good summary, Angie. And I think, before we start on those last 3 core competencies, I guess I'll give Risa and Kevin, I don't know if there's anything that y'all wanted to highlight within those first 3 core competencies, like the licensing process, the regulations, or operations. So I think that'd be a good chance for y'all to chime in if there's anything we missed there.
Not for me, I don't think so.
All right. Risa, good to go?
I think we're good to go. This is not 30,000 feet. This is like 10,000 feet, so it's an overview. We have a few links, and hopefully it's enough for you to be familiar, so that if you are in a conversation beginning to work on this, it's not completely foreign, and you have some place to look up, like, what was that again, or what was that acronym again? So this is hopefully a primer for you.
All right, awesome, great. Yeah, obviously we're not going to go through everything, but we just want to give y'all a high level view of the core competencies, some of the key points, and how to navigate around them. So next up is the collaboration and negotiation core competency. And this one just goes over the dynamics of the different relationship dynamics that can happen within a hydropower licensing, and recognizing the different individuals, organizations, agencies who may live, work, recreate in, or have a stake in the free-flowing rivers or resources that are going to be around a proposed hydropower dam. So when you're going into one of these relicensing projects or a licensing project, you go into it with some things that you must have and some things that you would like to have, right? And it's kind of finding a balance of how to reach those things while also being mindful of other stakeholders and what they're trying to achieve as well. And we kind of break that down by helping you understand the different participant roles, whether that be a licensee, tribes, government agencies, and the public, as well as some key skills that can help you throughout the collaboration and negotiation process, so that we can see strategic relationship development, negotiation, mediation skills, project management, communication skills, and then also some EJ and equity principles that can be incorporated into the collaboration and negotiation process. And then the next session that we have it broken down into are stakeholders and tribal groups and their priorities. So it's trying to identify the various different priorities that interest groups may have, and whether those priorities or mandates can overlap with other groups. So it's trying to learn and understand the role of stakeholders with whom you may be working with. And we have some examples of how that can appear, right? So that can show up as federal agencies, state agencies, and also local agencies. And then there might also be NGOs and the public that are participating as well. And then also tribes and other indigenous communities. So clicking into each of those kind of gives you an idea of how you can try to align with those different priorities for each of those stakeholders. And that's a quick little overview of, the collaboration and negotiation core competency. And next up, we have the natural, cultural, and recreational resources, which is definitely the competency that has the most information kind of packed into one. Because, I mean, there could be a core competency for each of those different types of resources, because there's just so much knowledge out there, and there's so many ways that impacts the process and relates to the process. But we try to kind of fit it all into this. But the main gist of it is that rivers and their surrounding landscapes provide a large and diverse array of natural, cultural, and recreational resources. So I think the point of this core competency is trying to help new practitioners and also experienced practitioners understand who to contact with specific resource expertise, and if we can scroll down, whether that be like aquatic resources, cultural resources, it's trying to help you find those resources when you're in that specific niche in the licensing process, or if you need some extra guidance on some very specific knowledge. So examples of that, of practitioners' priorities, that's kind of a similar theme as we break it down into those three groups of tribes and indigenous communities, NGOs and the public, and then also agencies. So clicking under each of those, you can kind of go in and kind of realize or understand what each of these groups' priorities are. So it can kind of let you know who's dealing with what throughout the process. And then at the very bottom, we have resources for each of those niches, right? So aquatic resources, whether that be like water quality or monitoring, and also riparian species and like habitat associations. We also have cultural resources, recreation resources that deals with recreational flows, accessibility considerations as well, day use and campground facilities, and then also terrestrial resources covering wildlife, botany, vegetation, whatever it may be, and then also aesthetics. So, we have resources on how you can evaluate photo simulations for visual impact assessments, and then also other things like night skies and managing lightscapes and aesthetic flows. So there's a lot of information to cover here, but I think the best way to use this is to kind of, when you're at a point in the process where you need specific information that under one of these categories, you can go in, kind of find a resource to help you learn a little bit more about it. And last up, we have the environmental justice and equity core competency, which is definitely one of the most challenging ones, because we realize that there's not a lot of EJ and equity resources out there that directly relate to hydropower, right? So that was a challenge for us, and this was kind of the core competency that I took on, something that I really helped the team develop, and it was a really interesting challenge to take on. So we're excited to share this with y'all. And kind of similar to the light bulbs, we have a bar to the right there that covers what is environmental justice. So it kind of just gives you like a background, right? Maybe I'm sure we've heard of it before, but maybe you're not exactly sure what that means, right? Especially within the hydropower licensing process. So that gives you a background of what that means and how you can put that into practice. But we think that it's just important to understand the fundamental aspects of environmental justice and equity as a platform for community engagement during your licensing process. And also realizing how you can help historically underserved communities, and then also just by reducing potential negative impacts to those underserved and overburdened communities when you're going through this licensing process, and how to advocate for that and put those principles into practice. We break that down into 4 sections. So first off, we have understanding your organization. So we understand it's pretty broad, right? the guidance out there isn't going to apply to one like agency, to one group, to the public, right? So we kind of give you an example of what to look for. So if you can click on the FERC example there, Becca, yeah, you can open that up. So yeah, that kind of gives you like FERC's mission and some of their guiding principles that kind of relate to environmental justice, and also covers links to their equity action plan, to their Office of Public Participation, which encourages public engagement. And just thinking about how you can find similar resources for your own organization or your own agency, right? So kind of taking that as a template for the things that you can look for to try to implement those principles. And second, we have tools on how to actually find these underserved communities, right? So identifying the relevant communities. And here, if we open up that drop down there, that covers the climate and economic justice screening tool, which helps you find disadvantaged communities and also tribal communities that may be near your project area. And then we also have the tribal TDAT tool, which can help you initiate tribal engagement. But these tools can help you identify those relevant communities. And then we also realize that like accessibility considerations, you kind of have to know the area and know the project and know the people that are actually using those recreation resources to kind of make those considerations. And then last up, we have ways that you can reduce the negative impacts. So it's kind of teaching you some ways of how you can address EJ and DEIA into study plans, recommendations, and conditions. And then also different ways that you can seek to engage communities through meaningful involvement, and also engaging with tribal governments and indigenous communities. And then there at the bottom, we understand sometimes, it can be kind of hard to visualize how this stuff can fit into the hydropower licensing process. So we gave you 2 case studies with School Street Falls and also the Kootenai Falls that give you a background of the story and give you a real world instance of how these EJ principles can be implemented into the hydropower licensing process, and how they can make that lasting and impactful change that we've talked about. So yeah, we can go through those stories and see those real world instances. And yeah, that is a quick run through of all of the 6 core competencies. We'll have an opportunity a little bit later to have some questions or some feedback. But for now, we're going to pass it back over to Angie to cover our gap analysis.
Thanks, Ankel. And I think we're going to get the slides pulled back up here. But just to kind of talk a little bit about the gap analysis that we did. So kind of going back to the process that Krista and Risa were mentioning earlier, once we had our core competency areas defined and we'd identified some subcategories, we gathered resources from our subject matter experts and advisors. And then we looked at all these resources and we kind of broke them down into the different areas. And some areas they might have overlapped between competency areas. But we looked at where were we rich in resources and where were we lean in resources, kind of like one by one in each of the subcategories. We also took into account the quality of the resource, or if they were specifically related to hydropower, or if it was more of a generalized resource and not specific to hydropower. And what we found is that, we had a whole bunch of resources come in. For example, in the licensing process, I think we had like 44 different possible resources that referenced it. So we had like a wealth of resources there. But up here on the screen, you can see some of the areas where we were lean in resources, or resources very specific to hydropower. And it doesn't mean we had no resources in these areas. These were just where we felt we could have more or stronger resources. So for example, in economics, in particular, we're looking for some more resources, and we're leaning feasibility considerations, or we're leaning some water rights resources. For collaboration and negotiation, we don't have stuff that's really specific to project management of like a hydropower licensing project, I guess, or strategic leadership. In our environmental justice category, we're lean on agency-specific guidance or resources for non-tribal environmental justice communities, as well as just, some more resources needed on tribal and stakeholder engagement in the FERC licensing process. And then in our natural, cultural, and recreational resources category, as Angel noted, it's one of the areas that covers like so many different subcategories. But maybe also because of this, we are like lean in resources in certain subcategories, such as we've identified a lot of points in the aquatic resources, but just making sure that we have those resources to really back up those points. Same with cultural, like resource monitoring and terrestrial resources as well. So this was where we found, we are lean in some of these areas, but we are very rich in many of the other competency areas that we identified. Now I'm going to pass it over to Kevin to share kind of like what we're going to do with all this information. Kevin, you are muted.
There we go. Rookie mistake. What can I say? Thanks, Angie. I think the first thing I would say is that, any website left to itself quickly becomes stale. So this website's going to continue to evolve. Over the course of the summer, certain sections were rewritten multiple times, and will probably be rewritten even more. And so there are going to be future updates and enhancements for the websites. And at the same time, we're also integrating this with the Hydropower Reform Coalition website. For one, to take advantage of the resource library and the website itself. The HRC website is a wonderful tool for hydropower licensing. But what we kind of realized was there really wasn't a good entry path in that website for a new practitioner. And it would be kind of like dumping somebody at the deep end of a pool and saying, go ahead and swim. So we are going to be integrating and developing pages on the HRC website. But I'm going to talk a bit about the resource library. So I think earlier on it was mentioned we had identified something like 70 resources. Well, over the course of the summer, that number has grown to close to 200 resources, actually. And of those 200 resources, about 30 were already on the HRC, in the HRC resource library. So we're in the process of importing all the other resources into the HRC library, all the other public resources. We're not importing non-public resources. And those will be, cataloged and tagged, and in the future, they'll be available. And probably, if we can put the snapshot up of the HRC resource library, I can talk through that a bit. There we go. So this is how the resource library currently looks. It's got, on the left-hand side, it's got some check boxes and some little plus boxes. This is all going to be redesigned because right now it doesn't talk about core competencies anywhere. But just as an example, if you click on collections and tribal resources, click the little box there. What appears on the right side instantly, basically, is all of those tribal resources, in case there's 11 different ones. And these can be actually prioritized as to what you see at the top of the list versus the bottom of the list. And so as we redesign this page and integrate this into these core competencies, this will be a place people can go if they just really want to go find some resources. But once again, to dump a new practitioner into this library and just say, here's all the information, go fish, would be a pretty frustrating experience. So, so that's kind of where we're going to go with the resources. Let's go back to the original slide. Yeah, and so I guess the second big bullet point is that this is a great opportunity for collaboration and expansion, developing more work, accessibility work. We're talking about holding training workshops that we be recorded and also available in these resource libraries. So there's a wealth of things we can do to expand this website. I think my closing comment would be, we always kind of had to balance, drinking through a water hose versus less information in some places. We tried to make this as, I wouldn't say as easy as possible, but just easy to work your way into the hydropower licensing process, because it is a complicated process. And for people that did this years ago, they were just thrown into deep water. And we want this to be a more pleasant experience for new people coming into this process. And with that, I think I'll pass it on.
Awesome. And then one last thing on that last slide that we did want to note too, some of the future work that we have to collaborate and expand the project. And this coming year, we have some plans to do some future accessibility work, and also some plans to hold some training workshops centered around these core competencies and figuring out ways to better get new practitioners and experienced practitioners involved into this to learn more about the process.
Thanks, Angel and Kevin. So now we're kind of getting to the time where we would love to hear some of your thoughts and reactions around what we've been sharing with you today. And we're going to have some time here in a minute to do some Q&A. But if you have any initial reactions that you'd like to share, please put those in the chat, and because we'd love to hear them. But, also thinking back to some of those gaps, we're curious if you are experienced with hydropower and going through the licensing and relicensing process, if there's any other gaps that you see, or maybe if you're someone who's new to it and something that you might not understand or think needs more explanation, we'd love to hear that as well. Or what do you like and what resonates with you? Also, if you have any other resources or specific feedback, you're welcome to send it to us at rms@management.org. I'm going to put that here in the chat. And then also, like some other things to think about, maybe some discussion we can have is based off of what you've seen today with this toolkit. Is there any type of training that you could envision around this, or any training that you would like to see that could be helpful to you in your job and working with hydropower? Or if people have any examples of where they might be able to use this toolkit. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And I think our next slide is just Q&A. So also, if people would like to comment verbally, you can raise your hand in Zoom, and once your hand is raised, but you're also welcome to put some things in the chat. And I see we're getting a few comments. This is an impressive resource. Our forest will be undergoing relicensing in the near future. It's great to hear, Andrea, and that this might be of use to you. Tom mentioned, be nice to have a reference section, and maybe you do, that has comments, letters for each stage related to recreation and aquatic resources. That's a great point, Tom. Thank you for sharing that. And I also just want to open it up now to any of the other of my teammates who have been helping work on this project, if there's anything else that they'd like to add here as well.
This is Risa, just a comment on a response to Tom Asista. When you have specific questions on any project, you can look them up on the FERC website. You must ingest a good dose of bravery before you do so, because it's a huge resource that's pretty complicated. You can find things that you need. If you want specific examples of types of projects, though, that's where this will hopefully become a good and a continually growing evolution. I've been looking for like really great examples of a portage or a site redevelopment or capacity at a, you know, at a dam. And those resources, I think FERC's working on them, but it's young enough a request for expertise. So it's sort of thanks for the question, and stay tuned for more things, because I think there are a lot of folks who know it's important, but we're not quite there yet.
I think I would add to that, if you've never yet been to the FERC docket, it can be a frightening experience when you get there. One thing that I would say is it possible to pull up that HRC website again, because there is a tool that is excellent. It's actually a map, and we'll pull it up and do a quick search so people can see how it works.
Can I offer defense of the FERC website and docket while you're pulling this up?
Yeah.
I mean, my counterpoint to that is everything is there. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to like find the basis for a Forest Service decision from like the early 90s and try to, you know, search through, get staff to like mine through file cabinets and find information. It's a nightmare. The benefit of FERC is, yeah, it can be overwhelming, but it's all there.
That's very true. It is all there. But if you don't really know where something is you're looking for, and you're looking at a date range of 20 or 30 years, you can see thousands of documents on the docket. And it's so yeah. Check. I think is it about hydropower resources map? Yeah, click on the map. And this is a great tool. So if you're interested in a project, you know the project number. At the top of the map, just start typing in the project number. And as soon as you get, like, type in 1971, boom. That's the Hells Canyon complex, all 3 projects in the Hells Canyon complex. So it's an incredibly fast search function. And all you don't need to do the P or the dash or anything else. Just start typing in the project number, or you can use the name or location. There's a ton of different filters you can use. Like, click on Brownlee, and you'll get the information about the license. So it's all your basic information on the license and a map, Google map of where it's at. So it's a very very strong tool. And on that,
I saw Dawn.
Again.
Go ahead, Risa, first.
I totally agree. I just think to Tom, you have to be really brave to do what you're willing to do, Tom, on a daily basis, because you're so familiar. So not arguing against it, but that's why I asked for just a dose of bravery before you go ahead. And I'd like to respond to the last comment about looking elsewhere related to dam projects as examples. I think that our country is getting to folks who are working on dams and hydropower project evaluation, if not challenges, are getting closer to working with other countries and looking at international examples of what we might look to as alternatives. The context that we're talking about is FERC specific, so working within the context of a license and what is required. But those examples like those you're mentioning, I think they're almost perfect for being an adjacent resource and something that we should look for in the future. The context is often quite different when you're looking at a different country for the basis and the regulations and rules under which or based on which they were built and are maintained. So sometimes it's not apples to apples, but that's a great suggestion. There's an awful lot happening in other parts of the world.
Don, if you'd like to go ahead and share your thoughts with us, go ahead.
Yeah, my thoughts are this is awesome. And thank you. It's evident a lot of work went into this, and I really appreciate it. It's going to be a wonderful resource for a number of people. I always struggle. I'm Don Alvarez. I'm with the Forest Service. I'm the program manager for the Regional Hydropower Assistance Team in California. And we often get stakeholders or members of the public that come forward and ask us how to participate or want us to, as the Forest Service, to comment for them. And it's difficult to find those resources to share with them how they can advocate for themselves. And I think this is a great resource for that, as well as agency employees who are working on this for a place to point them for additional information. So thank you for pulling this together and for the launch party. And as far as gaps, I'm not seeing a lot, but one thing to consider, knowing what a monumental task this was, is in the future, maybe, and this is something we're struggling with too and would love to do, is stuff on license implementation and compliance going forward, and how members of the public, I know American Whitewater is a great example of a group, and others as well, that continue to participate in a license as it's implemented over the term of the license. And it's a little different, but how to do that as well. We've all put so much resources into relicensing. We want to make sure that those hard-earned mitigation measures continue through the license and are followed through on and complied with. So maybe some place to look in the future if you're not already. But thank you. I think this is awesome, and it's making me excited. So.
Good.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Don. I've seen some other comments come through in the chat about just that this will be helpful for new people, an impressive resource that will be a great benefit to NPS staff and our tribal and NGO partners in the Blackstone River Valley, Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So thanks everyone. And then Risa, I think you were speaking a little bit to some of these looking outside of the US for some examples from Rodrigo's comment. And then Joan asked, have we identified useful tools available from the openei.org wiki on hydropower? And Joan, yeah, go ahead.
I can add to that. Yeah, I think that's a good comment, Joan. We do have, I know, at least a couple resources from there. I think their settlement agreement document that they put together and a couple others, but we may be missing some from there. So that could be another good area to look for, or if there's any in particular that you think would be helpful. But I know we do have at least a couple from that lab.
Thanks, Susan, for hopping in there. Then I see Andrea asked if anyone on the call has any experience with relicensing when the owner has not been able to meet water quality standards, water temperature, and you do not want to lower the standard during relicensing, basically setting a standard that cannot be met. And so if anyone has any experience or examples, I suggest you connect with Andrea. I see Gustavo offered an answer. Any other questions, comments, feedback on our toolkit that we've shared with you today? And I guess one thing that we haven't done yet that I would like to do is share the actual link to the toolkit. I know Becca showed you all how to navigate there, but we do have a direct link to that initial page there. So I just put that into the chat. And as Becca mentioned, we'll also send that out in a follow-up email. So that way, if you don't bookmark it right now, you'll get it to your inbox as well. And Carrie says, it looks like a great resource. I'll be bookmarking it as I'm new to the program. So that is great, Carrie Ann. Thank you for offering that. And we'd love to hear any feedback as well from, it's great to get perspectives from people who've been in this process and can maybe easily identify areas where more information is needed. It's also great to hear feedback from people who are new to the process, because this resource is meant for those who are newer to the process and to be a 101. And so to maybe hear how helpful it is or any suggestions that you have, we're always interested in that. Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I think this was mentioned a little bit earlier, but as part of the next steps, we are going to be looking at accessibility. So for those of you that have an interest in this area, we're going to be looking at examples and best practices, and would love to hear, some of your experiences on working with accessibility broadly and in the FERC licensing process.
Yeah, that's a great plug. And then also, as we are looking towards, possibly developing some training, if anyone out there is interested in, helping out in like planning a training or being an instructor or subject matter expert, if this is calling to you, please reach out to us and let us know. And go ahead, Risa.
I just realized I sent a message to you, and that I was intending to send to everybody, but with Andrea, thanks for your question about the sort of a moving the goalposts example where water quality standard hasn't been able to be met. If it's related to something that the utility did, that's one thing. If it's a climate change issue that is, going to be addressed by a lot of people, a really good thing to learn about. Kind of on that topic, if anyone is working on or knows a specific licensing project for which there's been what seems like an unusual precedent, mitigation measure that might be either precedent setting or a good example, please share, because even if it's just for one particular project, their projects would be interested in something similar or something that they could learn from your example.
Thanks, Risa. And I see Amy just commented in the chat that the Forest Service in California, especially Tahoe and Plumas National Forests, have good examples of recreation management plans for recent licenses that have explicitly address accessibility. Awesome, Amy. Thank you for sharing that. We'll probably be reaching out about that. And then I saw Carrie Ann ask if you need to be an RMS member to access any of these pages that we've shared with you. And no, you do not. These are online and open to everyone. And yeah, please share. Not meant to be exclusive here. Meant to just help get more people educated and involved in these processes and being effective with their participation in these processes. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. We'll give it a few more seconds in case any come up, but I just want to say thank you again to everyone who's joined us today for this launch party. We hope you find this toolkit useful. As I've mentioned a million times, love to hear your feedback on it. Also, again, want to just give a huge thank you to all of our subject matter experts and our advisors who've helped us continuously throughout this process. You certainly helped out and made this easier for us to kind of digest and help guide us along the way. And then just all of the core team partners here who've helped put together this resource and the number of meetings that we've had and just to get through with this project that's really important. So just thank you all. And there's no other last comments or questions. I'll pause for a minute to see if any of my colleagues want to share anything else. Otherwise,
Yeah, and just pointing out Layla's comment, saying that they're new to the process and learning about the FERC relicensing on the Conowingo Dam. I think, yeah, like we mentioned several times, like this tool is really awesome for beginners. Me, myself, knowing from firsthand, getting to develop this and also coming in as a beginner with the FERC process. Yeah, it's a perfect tool for that. And I've learned a lot through it all. And yeah, don't be afraid to share it to people that are coming in and that you also know are new with the process. So, but yeah, thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.